afternoon. I'm Victoria Marshall with the latest news from the Washington Watch News Desk. The House of Representatives task force investigating the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump released its interim findings today. The report notes that the deadly shooting, which took place at a Trump rally in Pennsylvania on July 13th, was a preventable incident stemming from lack of planning and communication between law enforcement. According to the task force, U.S. Secret Service personnel at the event did not give clear guidance to state and local authorities about how to manage security outside of their hard perimeter, nor was there a central meeting between Secret Service and the law enforcement agencies supporting them the morning of the rally. The task force found that gunman Thomas Crooks had been under scrutiny by local law enforcement for roughly 40 minutes before information about a suspicious person reached the Secret Service command post. The full House Task Force report is expected to be released on December 13th. And with just 2 weeks until the election, national polls show Donald Trump leading Kamala Harris. Trump has also pushed past Harris in Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan, swing states Joe Biden won in 2020. A new poll by Trafalgar Group has Trump leading Harris by 46 to 43% in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania. In contrast, Democratic Senate candidate for Pennsylvania, Bob Casey, is nearly tied with Republican Dave McCormick. Over the weekend, Trump made headlines by working at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania to claim that he has worked for 15 minutes more than his opponent, Kamala Harris. Harris has repeatedly claimed she worked at McDonald's as a college student.
I love McDonald's. I love jobs. I like to see good jobs. And I think it's inappropriate when somebody puts down all over the place that she worked at McDonald's. It was a big part of her resume that she worked at McDonald's, how tough a job it was. She specifically worked at the French fry, where they make the French fries, and she talked about the heat. It was so tough. She never worked at McDonald's. McDonald's just confirmed that again, by the way. She never worked at McDonald's. It's cute. This is fun. I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job. I like this job. I think I might come back and do it again.
Thank you.
Look at that. Look at that. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Nice.
Meanwhile, as Trump was working the fry counter, Vice President Kamala Harris was campaigning in Atlanta with pop star Usher.
I think, and I do believe Donald Trump is an unserious man. And the consequences of him ever being again in the White House are brutally serious.
And in other domestic news, the U.S. is investigating a leak of highly classified U.S. intelligence about Israel's plans for retaliation against Iran. The documents, marked October 15th and 16th, went viral on Friday after being posted on Telegram by an account called Middle East Spectator. The documents describe preparations Israel is making for a strike against Iran in response to Iran's missile barrage against Israel on October 1st. Here's what House Speaker Mike Johnson had to say about it yesterday.
The leak is very concerning. There's some serious allegations being made there, investigation underway, and I'll get a briefing on that in a couple of hours. There's a classified level briefing and then other, but we're following it closely.
And finally, in international news, a British Army veteran has been convicted for silently praying outside an abortion clinic in the UK. Adam Smith-Connor was found guilty of violating a buffer zone around an English abortion clinic in 2022. The court ruled that despite his silent prayer, Smith-Connor's posture of prayer was enough to show disapproval with abortion.
I never imagined that the nation I love and has been so good to me in the past could turn on me for doing nothing more than offer up a prayer for my deceased son.
Smith-Connor was charged under the UK's Public Spaces Protection Order, a broad censorship order that localities can use to curb supposedly antisocial behavior. And those are today's headlines. I'm Victoria Marshall. Up next is Washington Watch with Tony Perkins. We'll see you tomorrow with more news.
From the heart of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., bringing compelling interviews, insightful analysis, taking you beyond the headlines and sound bites into conversations with our nation's leaders and newsmakers, all from a biblical worldview. Washington Watch with Tony Perkins starts now.
The leak is very concerning. There's some serious allegations being made there. Investigation underway, and I'll get a briefing on that in a couple of hours. There's a classified level briefing and then other, but we're following it closely.
That was House Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday on CNN's State of the Union, commenting on top secret documents from the U.S. being leaked regarding Israel's preparation to strike Iran for their October 1st attack on the Jewish state. Welcome to this Monday edition of Washington Watch. Thanks so much for tuning in. Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, will join us with the latest on this leak that further undermines an already faltering relationship between the Biden-Harris administration and Israel. And over the weekend, Israeli forces targeted about a dozen branches of a financial institution in Lebanon that is the quasi-banking system for Hezbollah. It appears Israel is stepping up its efforts to eliminate the threats from both Hamas and Hezbollah prior to the November 5th election. It appears Iran may also be on that list. We'll talk about it. Also, we'll hear from House Speaker Mike Johnson on Israel's elimination of Hamas leader and October 7th mastermind Yahya Sinwar. Also, Vice President Kamala Harris was campaigning in Georgia yesterday at the New Birth Baptist Church.
And my earliest memories of those teachings are about a loving God. A loving God. A God who asks us to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves.
Yes, Jesus loves the little children. Well, I have to ask this question. Has the vice president made unrestricted abortion until birth her top policy priority? Where does speaking for the unborn fit in? The answer is it doesn't. But we do, and we will. We'll speak up for them. We'll continue our look at the 10 states that have abortion on the ballot. Today, we'll look at Arizona with Kathy Herod, president of the Center for Arizona Policy. Also, over the weekend, there was an attempted drone attack on the private residence of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he was asked if that attempted attack would deter Israel's actions to eliminate the threat of Hezbollah. Here's what he said.
Well, 2 days ago, we took out Yahya Sinwar, the terrorist mastermind whose goons beheaded our men, raped our women, burnt babies alive. We took him out, and we're continuing our battle with Iran's other terrorist proxies. We're going to win this war.
So will something deter you?
No.
We'll talk more about that with Carolyn Gleck of JNS News. She'll be joining us live from Israel a little later here on Washington Watch. Election is right around the corner, 2 weeks away, and we have early voting underway in many states. We have a toolkit available for you to help you cast an informed ballot. Look, I've said this before. I will continue to say it. As Americans, we have a right to vote. As Christians, we have a responsibility to vote. To vote for those who are most closely aligned with biblical truth. I know it's not going to be a perfect choice, but we need to vote for those who will most closely align with biblical truth. To help you make that decision and cast an informed ballot, we have a toolkit available for you. Simply text the word toolkit. It's one word, toolkit, to 67742. That's toolkit to 67742. An investigation is underway following the leak of highly classified U.S. intelligence on Israel's plan to attack Iran. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby told reporters on a call this morning that President Biden and the administration are, quote, deeply concerned about the leak, and they have no reason to believe additional documents will be leaked. Now, this comes only after about a week ago when another letter, a letter from the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and the Secretary of State Antony Blinken, letter was leaked to their Israeli counterparts. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Scott Perry. He serves on 4 House committees, including the Intelligence Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. He represents the 10th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. He is also a combat veteran who retired at the rank of Brigadier General in March of 2019. Congressman Perry, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, it's great to be with you, Tony. And there's a lot of things that are interesting about this leak. I got to tell you, as soon as I heard there was a leak, I hate to say it, but in my heart and in my gut, I was like, somebody on the inside of the United States government did this. Now, you should quantify that or qualify that if you're going to think that and say that. But we have an administration, and quite honestly, we have one of the major parties in America, one of two major parties, the Democrat Party, that is rife with anti-Semitism. We have an administration that has been working against Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government. They've been working to overthrow his leadership there and have been playing on both sides of this war. So I was not surprised, quite honestly, when it was validated. Now, we're waiting to get a classified briefing on this. The agencies that have headlined this have, rightly so, not published the information because there is classified information within it. But what is also curious is that while President Biden has commented on this leak regarding his alleged concerns, the person that would be president, that wants to be president for the next 4 years, has been eerily silent on this. And understand the context of this is while she's trying to win Michigan and Wisconsin, who are generally supporters of not the states, but there are populations within those states that are supporters of the Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and Houthi cause. And so, unfortunately, how does the greatest ally that America has ever had, the only real ally that we have in the region, which is Israel, how do they trust the United States of America when these kind of things occur?
Right. Now, this was intel gathered by the United States on Israel. This didn't come from Israel. We're kind of snooping on Israel and reporting to others what Israel is doing. How many individuals would have access? Any idea how many would have access, and whether or not political appointees would have access to this information?
I would think that political appointees would have access, likely contractors. That's people that DOD hires to do some of the intelligence analysis, those kind of folks. And, look, we've got an administration that is pretty loose with security clearance obligations and is loose regarding the fealty, the love of America and America's interests. And unfortunately, like I said, I just wasn't surprised. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I have not been surprised. And I think that there are plenty of individuals within this administration that seek the downfall of Netanyahu and don't hold Israel as a dear ally of the United States of America, and wish to see Israel taken down to size and agree with the cause of Hamas and Hezbollah.
Congressman Perry, as I mentioned, you're a combat veteran. You've operated in the field. This is a major breach when we're putting out classified information about military operations of an ally. I would think that Israel, given also the leak that took place last week on a letter and the threats that we've been putting out there, and there was other information that was leaked about there in advance of their movement into Lebanon against Hezbollah a couple of weeks ago. I would be shocked if Israel would trust the United States and share information with them in the future.
Well, you're absolutely right, Tony. I mean, we all watch each other. We all look to see best practices and tactics, techniques, and procedures. That's what governments and militaries around the world do. Israel does it to the United States. We do it to allies as well as foes. Everybody's understanding of that. Here's what we don't understand. Here's what Israel won't be able to countenance: the revealing of that information to their adversary. Because as you know, Tony, as anyone who's watching this can imagine, this equates to lost lives on the ground. As soon as one of the primary elements of success in military operations is the element of surprise.
Right.
And once the enemy has that, your folks are in great peril. And
Right.
so this is the United States. This is essentially a direct and complete betrayal of Israel's greatest ally. And so Israel is going to have to proceed with caution now with anything that they tell the Biden administration. And why shouldn't they? Their service members' lives are on the line.
Over the weekend, Israeli forces struck Al-Qard al-Hassan, the quasi-banking arm of Hezbollah, Is this more of the fracturing of Hezbollah's control and shaking the people's confidence in Hezbollah?
Well, this is Israel eradicating their number one enemy. Israel has a house, and in that house, there's a room with a terrorist living in it, and that terrorist is Hezbollah. It also is in the form of Islamic Jihad and Hamas. That's what that is, and Israel is very serious about extinguishing this threat so that they can live peacefully. Israel has reached out its hand over and over and over again to be rejected by the terrorist organizations that are proxies of Iran. And I think Israel has simply said, we've had enough. We are done trying to appeal to these people's interests and their good charity. And we must defeat this enemy that kills innocent men, women, children, elderly people. We simply must defeat them. And even if the rest of the world is watching and doesn't agree, the rest of the world doesn't have to live under the threat of conventional warfare and soon likely nuclear warfare.
Right. I mentioned the leaked letter last week. The Biden administration threatened an arms sanction on Israel if more humanitarian aid did not flow into Gaza. That was the leaked letter that was to the counterparts of Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin. Now, this despite the fact that Hamas has been repeatedly accused of stealing supplies from UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. Ironically, food rations were found inside the bunker of now deceased Hamas leader Sinwar. I mean, Israel has long said that Hamas is the problem when it comes to the aid issue. Why is this being ignored by the Biden administration?
Because they're on both sides of this war. They wish to appeal. First of all, they're not really in support of the Jewish state. They're certainly not in support of Prime Minister Netanyahu. And this has become political for them. Like I said, one of the major parties in the United States has this corrosive but large-scale and sweeping anti-Semitic component to it, and they want their votes. So they're pandering for their votes. And again, instead of going after the terrorists and demand that they lay down their arms, they're going after Israel, who was attacked in an unprovoked fashion, as always, and demanding that they lay down and that they give more and more and more. And no one should be surprised that the aid has been found in the leaders of Hamas or Hezbollah's homes or bunkers or headquarters. Everybody in the world knows this, and that's why we tried to defund the United Nations Relief and Workers Agency. But literally, the majority of the Democrat Party in the House of Representatives voted against defunding that. So we have American tax dollars funding the enemy of Israel, the terrorist state of Iran through their proxies, Hamas. And you have this Biden administration playing on both sides of the war for political purposes. It is dangerous to civilization. It certainly puts lives in perils, and now of American service members serving alongside missile batteries in Israel.
It's an outright shame.
Yeah.
Congressman Scott Perry, thank you so much for taking time to join us on this Monday. Always great to see you.
Thank you, Tony. God bless you.
Folks, and I just want to encourage you, we need to pray for our leaders that they would do the right thing. It is a very dangerous place to be operating in a way that is against Israel. I'm just saying, history records that. Don't go away. We're going to hear from House Speaker Mike Johnson next here on Washington Watch.
We humbly, Father, bow before you in these moments that we have together. That this wouldn't just be any other conference, but that literally, Lord, you would reset our hearts to be in alignment with your word, that you would reset the city of Washington, D.C. to be in realignment with your word.
There's no politician, including Trump, that can affect the soul of this nation. You're the only one. The answer's not in the State House, and it's not going to be in the White House. It's got to be in your own house. It's got to be in the Church of God. It's got to be in his house.
Our principles never bend to politicians. Yes. Our principles never bend to politicians. By God's grace, it will be the other way around. Politicians will bend to our biblically based child protective principles.
No matter what comes in November, no matter if it doesn't go the way you want or I want or the things we prayed for, our focus and priorities do not change as Christians. We fight against evil. We stand for truth. We tell people the good news of Jesus Christ. We tell them the truth.
So let's not be discouraged. Don't lose heart. Don't lose the faith. Stand now strong, because the Lord has given us the great privilege of living in a time when our choices matter, when our lives matter, when our courage matters. So let's stand together and save this great country. God bless the United States of America.
There are 40 million self-described evangelical Christians who do not vote in a presidential election. If half of those people who sit in church on their blessed assurance would pray, stand, and vote, we would change every election in this country from the school board all the way to the White House.
All it takes, friends, is one generation for us to lose what is valuable, important, and sacred. Every generation has the opportunity to preserve what is right, what is godly, what is good about the United States of America, or to shirk our responsibilities and to watch what happens in just one generation in our country.
This may not be an easy task, but we are living in a moment of challenge, but also of great opportunity. And we know, always, that we are not alone, that His Spirit empowers us and protects us, and that He can do the unimaginable. Dobbs, after all, was never supposed to happen.
Father, we thank you. You have entrusted us with this moment in history, and I pray that we would be found faithful.
Welcome back to this Monday edition of Washington Watch. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, I have a weekend program with House Speaker Mike Johnson. It's called This Week on the Hill. It airs on the Salem Radio Network, Salem News Channel, Salem Podcast Network, and townhall.com. If you haven't tuned in to that yet, I encourage you to visit thisweekonthehill.com. Now, Speaker Johnson joined me this past weekend to discuss. In fact, he was literally on his way from one city to the next for his American Revival Tour through the swing states. And he joined me to talk about Israel's elimination of the mastermind behind the October 7th massacre, Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, in Gaza. In case you didn't hear it, here it is. You put out a statement yesterday that let this be a reminder to Hamas and all of those who were involved in the October 7th attacks that you may try to terrorize and intimidate, but those who live under the banner of freedom will never surrender. This was a game changer, was it not?
It was a game changer. I just got off the phone right before I came live with you. Apologize for the lighting here. We'll come out of the tunnel in New York City here in a moment. I was on the phone with Speaker Ohana, who is my counterpart in the Knesset. That's the equivalent of the Congress in Israel. And he was giving me his firsthand account of where we are and how things stand. And I was glad to hear his report. They're very encouraged in Israel. Of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu has led this war and made some very decisive actions. I think he's made history in the way that they've been so effective and how they've taken out the leaders of these terrorist regimes. And make no mistake about it, this leader of Hezbollah, just like the leader of Hamas, was one of the most evil men on the planet. I mean, this one was the mastermind of the October 7th more than a year ago now, and has been the leader of all sorts of evil plots and a great enemy of America. So this was a service to all mankind, and we have to stand unequivocally with Israel right now as they continue to prosecute this war and try to bring an end to the conflict. We're entering now a new moment of security and freedom in Israel, and they've got to finish the job.
So, Mr. Speaker, what message does this send to Iran? How do they interpret this?
Well, they need to interpret this very clearly. I've tried to speak with clarity and conviction. I've encouraged the White House and our leaders in President Biden's cabinet to do the same. That we have to send the message to Iran that their actions will not be tolerated. That America will stand with Israel, and we will take care of these evil plots. I sent out a message this week, Tony, as you saw, to the leaders of Iran. I put it out on social media. They have an assassination plot against President Trump, our nominee for president, to be the 47th president of the United States. And I said unequivocally, make no mistake about it, in the eyes of the Congress, if you attempt an assassination on our nominee for president, that will be equivalent as an act of war. And as you know, under our constitutional system, it is Congress that declares war. So I want them to know, even if Biden is only communicating through staff, the Speaker of the House is very resolute on this, and I think the entire government of our country needs to take that kind of stand right now. It's very, very important for the whole world.
Mr. Speaker, let me ask you about that, because you just had a conversation with the Speaker of the Knesset in Israel. And I know they have to work with the Biden-Harris administration. I mean, they are the executive branch. But I think it's evident that without a solid support within Congress, Israel would be in a real jam right now.
Well, of course. I mean, I've traveled to Israel many times in my career, and you have as well, Tony. And when we meet with the prime minister there, the leaders of the IDF, the military, all their government officials, they all say from Netanyahu on down that if America was not standing strongly with Israel, they would cease to exist. I mean,